Hey,
Okay.
everybody!
Hello. We
Yeah.
are back.
We are back on the other channel.
Yep.
Whichever.
And if you want to see part 1, click the link on the screen.
Oh yeah, press the button.
Press the button. Click it. You
This
know
is-
you want to.
This is part 2 of a two-parter. So,
First
yeah.
part we discussed procedural texturing, and now we're going to be talking about image-based texturing and the
Image-based
various techniques
texturing.
of that.
Yeah.
We already kind of discussed Substance Designer, so I'm going to scratch that off my list here, my
Yeah.
imaginary list that's not in my hand right now.
Oh, but that's some interesting gray zone, right? Because you're procedurally generating image textures.
Yes.
So
I have a feeling our subject line was not well thought out.
no.
So, yes, I mean... Yeah, warning, podcast may contain tangents. Lots of them. And not the math kind. Those are cleaner. And less rambling.
Oh, was it a math joke?
That was a math joke, yes.
Kind of totally flew by me, but
Who's the programmer in the room?
Yeah.
Raise his hand.
well, I mean, I've been a programmer for a long time, but I came to the conclusion that I don't like programming. So, no.
Yes, but I love programming, so that's why I say I'm the programmer in the room.
Yeah.
Because I actually like being a programmer.
So,
When
yeah.
I make tangent jokes, there's a reason for it.
So, yeah, image-based texturing.
Yeah, that thing. See, it only took me 5 seconds to get derailed.
Yeah, I do like image-based texturing, but I like in free projects I mainly use it to do labels and stickers or text. Yeah, because text is still something you can't really do procedural. But
Yeah,
you
I don't think it would. I don't think it would work very well.
Yeah.
Images have the advantage of being kind of a universal format, so they're easy to get your hands on.
Yeah.
And but yeah, some of the tools that immediately come to mind that I love when it comes to image-based texturing are like bitmap to material, which is amazing if you're working with physically based shading for games or whatever. It just takes an image and then has like light cancellation. It's like if you've ever seen Crazy Bump, it's Crazy Bump
Oh,
on
yeah.
crack for less money.
Oh, Crazy Bump is great though. I think it's kind of. I mean, it's not that expensive, right?
Isn't it like $75 or something?
Nah, I don't think so. Wait, let me look it up.
Or maybe
Crazy Bump price.
Crazy
Guess
Bump.
I've used it a couple of times, but I mean, you can if you have an
Yeah, but-
image texture, you can make a normal out of it in Blender, right?
You can, but here's the thing. Bitmap to material, yeah, it's saying personal use is
Whoa.
$100.
$100, yeah.
That's for personal use, not commercial.
And commercial is $300. That's crazy for just a normal generating.
Yeah. Don't buy that, please.
No.
First of all, it's, in my opinion, like having used bitmap to material is just outright better. It does everything it does and way more powerfully. It generates like they have slope adaptation, which is super nice, which allows you to define what direction the light's coming from, and it'll actually use that to bump out the surface. It'll generate, it'll even try to generate things like detail maps for you.
Oh yeah.
It'll actually look at the detail on the surface and be like, oh, hey, this looks like a scratchy surface, and it'll generate some scratches for you.
Ooh, nice.
And like extract that, and it's like designed to be scaled down to a small detail level and repeated over the surface.
Yeah.
So there's stuff like that. It's a really, really nice tool for generating image-based textures and just getting it all like the maps that you need, your roughness and height map and all that. It's really, really fun. Plus there's Substance Painter, which is really awesome 3D painting application. Then there's stuff like Quixel Suite, which I haven't personally messed around with, which is a Photoshop extension that makes 3D painting more of a thing.
Yeah,
And of course,
I have
and of
some
course the old
experience in
classic Photoshop.
Photoshop, yeah. Yeah, that's the cool thing about Photoshop. They actually enhance their normal generation tool, so people who have the latest CC should check that out. Because a long time, there was no way to make normals in Photoshop. Like, yeah, I had seen some videos somebody who had a very elaborate procedure of actually creating them manually. But yeah, that's crazy work. But then after Photoshop had like Oh, I have the hiccups, I think. Woo, okay. Whoa, yeah, I have the hiccups.
This is gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I'm just gonna drink a little bit of water.
Okay, here's a drinking game, kids. And by kids, I mean anyone over the age of 21 or whatever your legal age for drinking is. Every time Cedric hiccups, you better take a long drink.
Okay, I think it's over. So yeah, Photoshop had this. Aw, disappointed Cynicat.
Disappointed. I wanted drunk viewers.
Yeah, we should do a drunken podcast sometime.
Except I'm not legally allowed to drink because...
Oh yeah, you're in America. That's right.
I'm in America, we have bullshit rules, and I'm 18, so...
Yeah, you have to be 21. I live in Belgium, for people who don't know that, and you can drink... I even think you can drink legally from 16 on here. But you have to be 18 to buy, like... I want to say hardcore drinks, but I just mean with a high percentage of alcohol. Like whiskey and such, yeah. The hardcore.
The hardcore drinks.
Yeah. But if you're 16, you can buy like beer, like just in the store. It's no problem. I think it's a bit young, but yeah. But stories like 15 years old or even 13 years old getting drunk here aren't that unregular. So.
Yeah, they're not that unregular here. We pretend it's illegal. So, yeah, okay. America's kind of weird in the way they culturally approach things, because it's like America is this country of extremes in so many ways because of the way they actually... I don't know what it is about American culture that causes it to be this way, but basically it's like this idea that, you know, for example, oh, well, you know, sex and everything, no, that's totally out of line, and you can't have anything, you know, anything sex related is super off limits and socially taboo. But no, violence, no, that's perfectly fine. Like, yeah. Extreme ultra violence, no, that's totally normal and stuff. And it's like, I don't think, you know, violence is necessarily bad. I think it's part of our culture as as humans. You know, we are violent creatures, so I don't think we should necessarily be super terrified about, like, yes, we will enjoy, like, a violent movie from now on, because that's what action movies are. But, you know, it's not just about the violence. It's about the awesomeness and observing the awesome combat and whatnot, and the awesome action. So, I don't know, it's this weird, like, attitude that America has that's very, like, all or nothing. Some things are good or bad. Well, you know, it's like, violence is totally fine. Yeah. And, like, but, you know, sex is completely and totally evil, and it's the idea that, you know, you're for us, you're against us, that kind of attitude. It's very pervasive here. And it's just, you know, it's kind of an interesting approach. It's like, you know, alcohol's not for kids. So we have a 21 and under rule for alcohol. You know, you can't have alcohol at all if you're 21 and under. But we have rules like, we also have rules like you're allowed to drive from 16 and up, and like, you're allowed to drive from 16 and up, which I can agree with those two things not being in combination. Like, not being allowed to drink while also being allowed to whatever, like, at that same age, especially when you're younger, because, frankly, take it from someone who knows firsthand, young people are stupid. Young people do very, very stupid things, very, very stupidly.
But and it's also the only time you can get away with doing stupid shit, right? I mean...
Yeah, pretty much. Depends on...
how stupid it is.
Yeah, it depends on how stupid it is. I was raised in a household where I was pretty much held accountable for everything I did, which did not stop me from doing stupid shit. It just made me sneakier about the stupid shit that I did.
Yeah. So, I guess also we kind of derailed there.
Yeah. Hey, tangents, man. Tangents, bro.
Tangents.
So, anyway, long ago in a galaxy far, far away, we were talking about image-based texturing.
Yeah. I was actually holding up a point, but I kind of forgot.
Sorry. There were rails, and then there weren't rails, and they were, like, off in the distance somewhere, and, you know, hey, we're going on a little detour with the train.
I know again. I was talking about Photoshop, yeah. But, Photoshop, in their last update, they had they have
the normal
like,
generator.
the normal generator, but you can adjust parameters like Crazy Bump, and you have a preview window like Crazy Bump. The only issue yet is that it's still a bit laggy, so the 3D preview isn't as smooth as one would want it, and not very representative at the moment, and the parameters are quite, like, geeky. Like, they're not very friendly, very artist friendly. So, I hope they improve that, but that could, like, take Crazy Bump, like, just out of the equation if they just do the same thing. Like,
I would argue bitmap to material already does that, but
yeah, I mean, but that's also like that's from algorithmic thing, right?
Yeah, it's just it's a cheaper, better alternative to Crazy Bump in my opinion. Because like I don't know, I've used both. I found Crazy Bump to be horrendously overexpensive for a ridiculously simple program.
Oh yeah.
And like this has everything. It even lets you switch between like OpenGL and DirectX kinds of normals. For those who don't know, normal maps, the way they work, and the way they actually work, is that you have basically like the color channels basically correspond to how much it's bending the direction the surface is pointing. So like, your red value might mean when it's low, it's bending to the left, and when it's high, it's bending to the right. And then your green channel is bending up and down. So high value might be up, and low value might be down. Here's the problem. DirectX and OpenGL, the two main renderers that like kind of powered the idea of normal maps, they have a disagreement. Whether or not a texture starts at the top left or the bottom left. This sounds really basic until you realize that this means that normal maps, basically it's like, okay, a high green value, does that mean going up or down?
Yeah.
So, and this is the problem. This is the reason why if you make a normal map and you try to use it in Blender, sometimes it'll be fucked up if you're using it from a different program.
Oh, yeah.
The reason for that is the green channel is flipped.
Yeah.
And the way you can fix that is you can go in Photoshop and invert the green channel.
Yeah. Or do it in Blender. I mean, you can even do that in Blender, right?
Yeah,
Just
you can do it in
split
Blender.
the RGB channels and
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more complicated, but if
you don't have
Photoshop, I mean,
yeah, it works if you don't have Photoshop, but yeah, so there's stuff like that which is really it can depend on like what engine you're using, like for example, Unity uses OpenGL standard. They use OpenGL's mode for how they interpret normal maps. So if you basically you have to kind of have them in that format. And I can't remember if it's up or down or like which one has the bottom left and top left kind of thing, but I remember that they are different, so sometimes you have to invert them. So as a result, it's like if you're going between something like Unreal Engine, which uses the DirectX standard, it'll be basically it'll be different than if you're using Unity or Blender or something like that. So yeah, Blender uses OpenGL, so they use OpenGL's methods.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, sorry, that was my nerd info dump there. So
yeah, it's cool.
But yeah, I mean that's that's also part of image-based texturing. It's like kind of there are little quirks like that you'll learn.
Yeah.
Because there's stuff like procedural texturing which can kind of avoid that because you're just doing it in Blender. Sorry if you can hear the hammering in the background, by the way.
Oh yeah, I've been hearing the hammering for 10 minminutes. I'm trying to ignore it.
I'm really sorry. My mother is doing construction stuff because construction stuff.
Yeah, well.
I apologize for the background noise. Anyway, but the thing about doing stuff in Blender is that Blender knows what the correct way to do things is. So when you generate normals, it's generating normals the correct way. But it's mostly like when you're dealing with images, because they are universal, because they can be shared, you're going to run into areas where they are going to be different, depending on how, they're actually made for one application, but they don't necessarily work the same way.
Yeah.
I need a mute button that'll actually mute my mic for a second while the hammering's happening.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, sorry. But so anyway, one of the things about hand-painted textures as well is the kind of sort of having to hop between the multiple applications. And knowing how to do that, because image-based textures, the advantage of learning how to make them is that they are they will work in any application, because images are pretty universal.
Yeah, I think, and I hope, also because computers are getting faster and stuff, that at some point, I don't know, maybe in Blender, and I think like there are already software packages who kind of try this and do this, but that you have like the painting power of Photoshop within, just like with all the tools within a 3D program, just to because you have texture painting in Blender, in 3ds Max, in Cinema 4D, and even ZBrush does this. ZBrush does this.
Yeah.
Quote unquote.
ZBrush kinda does that. It's like they have some texture painting tools.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think it's getting more advanced because texture painting is something kind of new. I mean, it's been around for a while, but
3D texture painting is relatively new.
Yeah, because
the idea of actually painting them in Photoshop and whatnot has been around for ages.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, of course. I'm talking about really 3D, like painting on 3D.
Yeah.
Because it takes up a lot of graphics power, and not a lot of 3D programs seem to be able to figure out how to handle like brushes. But
oh yeah, it's a total pain in the ass programming wise, because we're talking about projecting something onto a mesh and then reprojecting all that information onto an image without causing like horrible aliasing. Like one of the problems is if you just pick a bunch of points on the mesh, the problem is like you'll just project a bunch of pixels, but there'll be gaps in between them, and you'll get this weird striation problem. Like there are a bunch of weird glitches that you'll run into. Not gonna say how I know that, other than the fact that I've tried to make one of these and it was hell.
Yeah.
Do not take it lightly.
There's also vertex painting, but I personally don't like to vertex paint. It's nice to, if you do a small like sculpting exercise and you just want to add a little bit of color, like you made a face and you just want to make it blush a little, it's kind of handy, but I don't like to use it as a solution.
Yeah, I think the only program that's actually done vertex painting really, really well would be ZBrush, because that's like, they support millions and millions of polygons, so you end up getting a lot of resolution out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And it is quite nice to not have to unwrap your objects.
Yeah, true.
So, and they support it really well. All their painting tools are, for vertex painting and everything, so it's nicely put together. And but yeah, I think that's one of the only programs that's done it really, really well.
Yeah. I should get back into ZBrush. I've used that program years ago.
ZBrush has a learning curve on it that makes me want to punch a small kitten.
Poor kitten. Disclaimer, no kittens were harmed in making of this podcast.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is coming from somebody who uses Blender, who has like the steepest learning curve I've ever seen in a software package.
We're being totally hypocritical here.
Yeah.
Well, I'm being totally hypocritical. Blender, it's like, I can make fun of ZBrush's UI for being kind of shitty and having bad usability and being really confusing, but meanwhile, I'm a Blender user, also known as, has really shitty UI that is really, really confusing.
Yeah, it's kind of improving, especially with, Andrew Pricey Price throwing a lot of videos. Like, this has been a couple of years ago. This was a couple of years ago, where he put up a video, what's wrong with the interface. And they did kind of try to, well, especially in their new features, they try to improve the UI.
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely tried to improve the UI. I think, I know that Andrew Price sort of had his own idea of what the UI should be, and, sort of people, I guess, the devs who were working on the project did not necessarily agree with them, and he sort of, I don't know, I got the impression he kind of got huffy and left, so I don't know. Of course, I don't know what actually went down, but beyond just what I've been, what I've heard, but yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to kind of see where those kind of projects for improving the Blender UI kind of go for, sort of seeing how that, because people did want a better UI, and Blender's UI is sort of...
Yeah, but I think that the thing that you have to keep in mind is that Blender is not a developed program for the world, right? It's basically the Blender Foundation, which, I mean, Blender is their in-house tool, and their artists, they know perfectly how to work with the UI, and the UI, they made the UI. So it's kind of like also with like the latest Gooseberry project, the main features added, they were added because they needed it for the project, and like making it user friendly is more of a second.
Yeah, I mean, it's about, the thing is, it's also an open source project, so
Yeah.
It's an open source project that, is supposed to be kind of community driven, but that also means, this is the reason why they ship add-ons with Blender. If you crack open the add-ons section, there's a bunch of community made add-ons just there. So, the reason for that is just because it is a community project, but that also means a lot of these features get added by people who are not UI designers. There's no UI team going over these and saying, okay, well, we've implemented this feature, but before we can, really show it off, we need to have the UI looking really, really pretty. It's one of those things where it's actually, there's not like a pipeline you have to go through. It's like if you've got an add-on, if it's good and you've supported it for a while, it might get included in the main build of Blender.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's part of how Blender is actually made, as well as just with features. Like, Gooseberry made some cool features. They tossed them in because they would be useful, but they were tossed in with whatever the programmers made to control it.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, because they don't make any money off people downloading Blender, so I think they care. I do think, like, Ton Roosendaal and, like, all the other people at Blender Foundation, they care about people using Blender, and they find it cool that people use Blender, but I don't think they're gonna do a massive overhaul of the UI.
Well, I mean, they are planning on it at some point, but it's like...
I read something about it, but...
Yeah, what I'm really looking forward to is when they go through the whole 2.8 update.
Yeah, he made a huge announcement on that. I mean, okay, huge, quote unquote.
Yeah, I mean, the release notes for it look very, very shiny.
Yeah.
We might actually be getting an asset system that doesn't suck.
Yeah, I remember the asset system because I've worked in 3ds Max a lot, and like my teachers in that time, they were very focused on that asset managing system that you make your assets like in a different project and then import the assets but link the assets. So if you use the assets somewhere else.
Yeah, so you can share in between projects and whatnot.
Yeah, if you adjust them, they get adjusted everywhere and whatnot. And that's very handy for very big projects. The thing why I got into Blender is because I work on a lot of very small projects where I want one pipeline for the whole project and do in the end a little bit of After Effects and Premiere, sure, audio and such. But the main thing when I start off is all in Blender. And I don't have to manage different projects. But yeah, an asset management system would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I just want a project folder. That's like, I want to actually be able to see the assets and build like a pile of materials and stuff instead of it just being the weird floaty system that Blender now has.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean...
Like, I think the weirdest addition for me to Blender is the game engine.
Yeah... It's like, I have a fondness for the game engine in that it was one of the earliest game dev tools that I really worked with, but I also have a sort of, it's not very good. Like, it's really not. It's not great. It's pretty shit. I mean...
It's pretty, very shit, yeah. I mean...
Yeah. I mean, like, I am proud that they have it, but really...
Yeah, because it was kind of an experiment for them, because although the Blender Foundation mainly makes like animation projects, they also made a game.
The Yo Frankie game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that Blender is, Blender's actually reasonably large with indie game developers. I mean, like, it's actually kind of the go-to there a lot of the time. So, I mean, they definitely have a presence in the games industry. I would say, actually, they're probably more professionally used in the games industry than in film, but, which is kind of sad, but that's also because the games industry can support smaller companies at the moment, so.
Yeah.
Probably not for much longer, but it can for now, so.
Yeah, but I guess, like, if you would have a good game engine in Blender, that would also be, like, a super nice pipelining thing, right? Because as opposed to now, you have to make your objects, animate and rig them, and then put them in another game engine, like assetting. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Can I
No.
say that?
Well,
No?
it's not a word, but it is if you can use it. I mean, you might get lynched by grammar Nazis, but you know.
Probably. Sorry.
But
Sorry.
we got shotguns. We can deal with grammar Nazis.
My English is not that good.
It's still better than the majority of Americans.
But yeah, I mean, having one pipeline where you are adjusting like you're adjusting some code, and then you're like, and then you go into the model, like just tab into it and making some adjustments to the model. That would be nice.
And having all those mesh generation tools that are for the modeling program readily accessible for gameplay and whatnot would be kind of awesome.
Yeah, that was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or I mean, animate the node system, animate materials and whatnot within the game engine. That's some cool shit. I mean,
yeah, that would be pretty awesome. The downside to that, of course, is the how cluttered it would be and how much how much time would get split off to do the modeling and the game engine part. It's one of the reasons why I actually like that Unity has such a tight connection to Blender. Unity has, you can literally take a blend file, just a raw blend file, save it in a Unity project, and it'll import it like a model, and it'll do so as you make changes. So, for example, you can edit if I was, when I'm building an environment, I'll make all my assets in a blend file, save that inside the Unity project, just in the folders of it, and then cool. Set it up. And what it'll do is I can just literally have Blender open in one window, edit it, and when I save it, I can just Alt-Tab back to Unity. I don't have to close anything.
Yeah.
And Unity will just update everything, including in the scene that you've assembled out of these assets. So it's kind of awesome.
That's pretty sweet, yeah.
So I can throw in a bunch of boxes of the assets that I want, assemble a scene out of it, and then be like, oh, hey, I need this other asset here, and I'm going to go, make a gray box of it, and then I'll go in and replace it with the really high quality assets later. And that kind of stuff. So I do like that kind of integration. And
yeah.
Again,
Also,
I think that's pretty close to what that kind of tight integration is very, very enjoyable to use.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think also one may not forget that we're talking about pipelines here. Having all in one software package or something would be nice, sure. But as you say, cluttered up.
Yeah, and it can have problems,
Yeah. Also, you the downside is if you're working in a team, and you're making a game in the in the Blender in Blender fully. I think the Python scripts you have to save separately, so the programmers, okay, sure, they can work separately.
Yeah.
But if you're working on one blend file as your entire game, it's pretty. It's not very.
Yeah, Blender's not super great at the game side. It's not really designed for it, and that's again, I don't think it should be necessarily. I think it's a fun concept, but I don't think it's really practically applicable.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, having an isolated, having a game engine like Unity or Unreal that's or CryEngine or Frostbite or any of the other engines that's dedicated to just being a game engine, kind of has the advantage of it doesn't have to juggle all these different, its UI isn't designed for modeling, Blender's UI is designed for 3D art and animation. That's its thing. Yeah. And, it's not designed to do games. Unity's UI is designed to do games. It's designed to let you extend it. It's designed to let you build cool stuff within it. It has this component-based object system, but that component-based object system is not necessarily super artist focused. It's actually focused on programming because it's component based design. That's a programming concept. So
yeah,
there's stuff like that which, again, you sort of end up. It's nice to have a program that is specialized in that way. But yeah, it does take time to learn multiple programs, and it does take time to be able to jump from one to the other. But I think also there is an advantage to having programs that are specialized to a single thing, that are really good at that thing, and ZBrush, for example, the reason why I like sculpting in ZBrush is because it's completely designed from the ground up for sculpting. And while it's really shitty at a lot of things like modeling, its modeling tools are meh, in my opinion. It's okay, positioning objects in ZBrush. Something that is really, really easy to do in Blender is a total pain in the ass.
Oh, yeah.
Moving objects around and everything. Huge pain, kind of tedious, but at the end of the day, toolset is really, really useful for sculpting. So often what I'll do is I'll jump back and forth. I'll go assemble my base mesh in Blender. I'll jump over to ZBrush, sculpt the details, bring that asset back into Blender, and actually assemble my scene there. And so on and so forth. And kind of like understanding how to jump between applications, while it can be inconvenient at first, once you kind of get used to it, the advantage of having a program that is strictly designed for one thing can actually be very, very useful.
Oh, yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's a way you can generate image-based textures. So, is making a high poly mesh and baking it, and to kind of drag us kicking and screaming back roughly onto subject.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it was very subtle.
Yeah, I mean, like, drag us kicking and screaming, and probably with a lot of fire and blood. Yeah, that's... you try getting a train back on its tracks. It's not an easy task. So
yeah, I was in my head preparing and that's how you can do also image-based textures.
Yes.
But yeah, it's true what you say. I mean,
with kind of game textures and stuff. I mean, one of the things I kind of want to talk about before we, wrap up the podcast is final thing I kind of want to bring up myself is the idea of like how you actually store something can be very different in terms of how you actually approach it. Like with texturing using images, it's not just that all image-based texturing is the same thing. It's like, okay, well, you can procedurally generate images, or you can paint them, or you can do all this stuff. But there's also, even when you're doing the exact same steps to get the image, you can conceptualize it differently. An example of this is a lot of character artists will make a very high detail mesh, and that's where all their detail is. That's where their texture detail is, that's where all their normal information is, that's where all their, actual detail for the object is. It's just, I've got this high poly mesh that looks really gorgeous, it's basically a movie model, and I want to now put this in the game. And you do that by building a skin around the model, just matching it up, which is kind of tedious, retopology basically. And then you unwrap that, and then you bake the images from it that will make it look like that in the game, basically that do all the shading tricks that make it look like that high poly model while being cheaper to render. And that's a technique that works, but it doesn't work for everything, because if you do that to everything, every single object has to have its own texture, and that means that it has to be rendered on its own, which means each one has to be rendered individually, which takes quite a while, and it ends up slowing down your game. So in a real-world scenario with environments, you can't actually really do that. You can for certain assets, but not for everything. Unless you're doing like a first-person shooter or something where you have a very enclosed environment without many parts in it.
Yeah, true.
Again, so the other approach that I often use is your goal is to make a texture atlas, like a single image that has a bunch of textures on it that you're going to use. And instead of modeling a high-resolution mesh, even though those textures might have been made from one, your goal is to actually make a game mesh and use those textures on it, which, while it won't necessarily look like it was baked off a high-resolution mesh, it'll still look detailed, and this is how you do a lot of the AAA-style environments, like real game environments that are actually applicable, because you can reuse these same, you have something like metal grating. And funnily enough, you end up using a little bit more polygons doing this generally, but because you have to illustrate more of your shape with the polygons, because it's not just picking up all the detail. But the advantage is they're all like, they can use the same material, and they can all be drawn at the same time and stuff like that, which is very, very important when you have an environment made of 1,000+ objects. So, that's also huge. You need to render all of this world, and you have approximately 4 milliseconds to do it, because they gave all the other milliseconds to the programmers and the character artists, because they need the characters to look pretty. So, which is fine, that's part of being an environment artist, is working with very little, and, trying to strip as much as you can. Like, okay, this wall does not need to be as detailed as it is, because it's a wall. Focus on your key assets. And that's kind of the other element. When I'm building environments, at least for games, I generally break everything up into structural assets, stuff building atmosphere that's not actually meant to be looked at directly, just meant to be like background.
Yeah.
Stuff that's like, okay, this might be looked at, but it's not going to be like detailed or anything. So, you want to make that stuff as fast as possible, even at the sacrifice of detail.
Yeah.
And then make it look good, but don't make it run really fast. And then you have key assets, and these are like, if your player has a teleporter that he's using, make that look really, really, really good. Like, go in, basically make it a character, but an environment asset. You know, you're treating it like a character. You do the high poly model, you make everything geometrically correct, and you go through all that work, because at the end of the day, that's a thing that the player's going to look at and be like, oh my god, that's amazing, you know, look how cool that teleporter is. And even if you have to set it in a single room where the only thing in that room is that teleporter, so that it's the only thing besides like some minor assets around the edges that are being rendered, that's fine, because that's what the player's going to be looking at, and that's what they're going to be wowing about. That's what people are going to see in screenshots, because that's the pretty thing that people focus on.
Yeah.
People aren't going to notice, you know, that the wall is, you know, happens to be a 256 by 256 image, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's a whole nother art to decide on which you're going to spend your resources, right?
Yeah, because, I mean, you know, you don't have infinite resources, and when you save a little bit of power here, you get to spend it. Like, it's not just, you know, oh, well, you're cutting corners. No, you're cutting corners so that you can spend it. You have currency. You have saved, you know, performance from this that you can then render more stuff with, you know. It's like, you can make that character now have, it's like, okay, you've saved all this power, now you can do depth peeling on the character's hair, so you can actually have, like, layered hair and stuff, and, like, stuff like that. Or, you know, again, that's part of being a game artist, I know, you know, is, like, learning how performance works, and, you know, sort of how that kind of stuff ends up affecting how your actual game runs, because again, it's about, you know, to a certain degree, it is sort of your job to optimize, even though it's sad how much they're not, like, people don't really tell you about it, but, like, that's how you make a really good looking game, is by, you know, cutting corners, because then you get more power. You have 16 milliseconds to render everything. That's not much time.
Yeah.
Even with, you know, modern tech, that's not much time, because computers aren't nearly as fast as people have a tendency to think they are. A lot of it's smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, what is, you know, rendering in games? It's taking 3 points, sticking them to the screen, and drawing a triangle around them. Everything beyond that is just smoke and mirrors bullshit, which is really gorgeous, but it's smoke and mirrors bullshit. It's
smoke and mirrors bullshit. Yeah, that's it's a very good point. Also a very long point, but yeah, definitely interesting.
I am rambling. That is my thing.
Yeah.
If I had concise points, it wouldn't be me. Yeah. At least that's what I tell myself. In truth, I'm just really, really bad at doing concise stuff.
I feel you. But that might be an interesting subject for a later podcast.
Yeah, but, game art or something or whatever.
Oh yeah, that might be interesting. Maybe get somebody else in. Just so that we have 3 people who can ramble.
Even more rambling.
Or even more rambling. So I guess we'll leave it at that. And yeah. I hope you guys learned something.
I hope that was remotely interesting to you. If it wasn't, we'll probably still continue to make them, because we're people who make videos because we enjoy making them.
Yeah, because basically we came up with this idea because we've been talking a lot, right, on Skype, and we were just thinking about why not record our conversations and put them on the internet.
Yes, we, the internet, are bullshit. It seems to like it. I don't know why.
So yeah, I think we speak for I speak for both of us. When I say I hope you guys enjoyed this, we might do this again sometime. Except if people hate it. Well, we might still do it if people hate it.
Hey, I'm still gonna do it if people hate it. We'll upload it to my channel. I give no shits.
Yeah,
people can just ignore the video until it disappears because YouTube culls videos that you don't watch.
Yeah, true enough.
We will get all 4 of our viewers and all 4 of our dislikes, and we will just see how many dislikes we can accrue.
True enough.
Anyway, if you enjoyed this, you know, maybe subscribe. If you want to see when we do some other stuff, we usually do 3D tutorials. I'm going to be branching out into some other stuff as well.
Yeah, I'm branching out at the moment. Well, somebody else is giving some tutorials on my channel about making game engines and stuff. That's very interesting. So I'll just be putting up a lot of buttons on the screen or something that you can press.
The subscribe button. You know you want to click it. Okay.
Yay!
Yeah. Anyway, it'll give you a little notification whenever we post a new video if you're interested.
Yeah. Visit our Twitter, our Facebook pages, our websites that we don't have, I guess. Well, Red Bandit has a website, but...
You've got a website. I'm far less professional than that.
I have 2 websites. But well, yeah, and I'm gonna leave the end word to Cynicat because he likes doing endings. So, see you guys later.
My flamboyant endings will never end. Cthulhu Dahin. Peace out.